Isn't today awesome? I just want to share how much fun I'm having today, and I don't know, it's just so fun when we get to spend some time like actually being inspired and motivated, and the presentations today have been so amazing. And I've been loving this theme of people, place, and purpose. I want to share with everybody that I'm way out of my comfort zone right now. I do this from time to time, but typically I stand up here and I talk about marketing or advertising or things that I'm an expert at. But this theme of people, place, and purpose has spoken to me in such a big way that this is my attempt to kind of contribute to the vibe of the day today. So bear with me. I'm way nervous, and I just appreciate you guys, for being here and being in the room and, filling up each other's glasses, because I just think that it's already been such a powerful day. For those that don't know me, my name is Ben Sorensen. I'm the founder and the president of Ascent Digital. We're a full-service digital marketing agency here in Durango. I'm also the host of a podcast called Chasing Greatness. I'm a ultra runner. In 2022, I won Entrepreneur of the Year. There's a typo up here. It should say aspiring keynote speaker, which is why I'm so nervous right now. And a family man. So I would love to connect with you guys. These are my handles on Instagram and social media. It would be really cool if we can keep the energy from today and extend it out, into our lives and our work and our communities and things like that. I'm kind of on a mission to spread positivity and to, inject positivity into everybody's lives, which is why I'm doing this. I think that I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world because the way that I get to spend my time day to day, day in and day out with my work, my passions, and my hobbies is surrounding myself with incredible people. So when I'm at work at Ascent Digital, I get to spend most of my day talking to really successful business owners all over the country and hearing their stories. When I'm hosting my podcast, Chasing Greatness, I get to sit across the table and have long-form, uninterrupted, dedicated conversations with people that inspire me. And when I'm running ultra marathons, which is my favorite thing in the whole world to do, I get to go to amazing places with amazing people. And I've paid really close attention to themes that have arisen to the top through those conversations at work or on the podcast or on the trail during an ultra marathon. And there's been sort of one resounding theme that has crept to the top that all of these high performers have in common. And it's this idea of endurance. And I've been thinking a ton about the idea of endurance. And it's such a profound thing to consider because most people think about endurance in terms of athletic endeavors or, running long distances or biking long distances. But I've been able to pick up on some nuance through these hundreds and thousands of conversations that I've had about how we can apply endurance to other facets of our life. And the long and short of it is that if we can figure out how to endure, we can accomplish anything. When we were all little kids, I know that we were all told that we can do anything that we set our minds to. Well, I'm excited to talk today about the fact that that's still true. Whether we're 30, 40, 50, 60, or 70, it doesn't matter. You can still do anything that you set your mind to. And so I saw this quote that really resonated with me, and it reads, fortitudine vincimus. And it's a Latin phrase, and it translates to, through endurance we conquer. But how do we figure out how to endure? Well, we harness the power of our mind. And I loved what the morning keynote speaker was talking about today with the 8 inches, in between our head and harnessing our mindsets and the power of our mind to set us up for success through endurance. Recently, I ran a 100-mile ultra marathon on Antelope Island in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was a really cool experience for me. It was really profound. And I know that, we're in Durango right now, and for a lot of people, running 100 miles isn't a big deal, and I'm kind of surrounded by these elite athletes. But for me, it was an enormous deal, and it was really, really hard. So what I thought would be really fun today is if we can use my experience of what I'm going to call my suffer fest of running 100 miles. But it gave me an opportunity to tap into these things that I've learned through my conversations on my podcast and the conversations at work, and figure out how to harness our minds to create endurance, which got me to the finish line of that. And then how we can translate that to other components of our lives. But what is endurance? It's the ability to withstand hardship or adversity, especially the ability to sustain a prolonged, stressful effort or activity. And this is a clip at the finish line. You can see how excited I am. Nothing but happiness and excitement and pleasure. So you'll be able to see that, I'll get into it in a little bit here, but this is not one of those stories of the guy that showed up and just dominated it and conquered and, crushed it and won and all that stuff. It was a miracle that I even finished. So we'll be able to talk about that. But I love endurance because we get to apply it to these other parts of our lives like we've talked about. And so I've got some stats here just to hopefully illustrate how powerful the concept of endurance can be, beyond just athletic endeavors. One that I think is really fascinating is stock market performance. There was a study by Fidelity Investments, and what they did is they looked at the best performing portfolios that were under their management. And what they found is that the best performing portfolios they had were either dead people or people forgot that they had an account with them. And I love how powerful that is. We think about how sensationalized the news is, and it's like, is it a bear market or a bull market? Should we buy? Should we sell? Whatever, all these things. If we want to beat the stock market, we just have to forget that we're even invested in the stock market and just let it go. We have to endure the ups and the downs and all of the news and things like that. This one's near and dear to my heart. I've been joking with my wife for a while now that all I have to do with my podcast is one episode a week for the next 20 years, and I'll probably have a little bit of an audience by then. But according to data from Apple Podcasts, 50% of podcasts don't make it past episode 7. And to be in the top 10% of podcasts, all you have to do is make it past episode 21. So you're looking at a top 10% of podcast guy. But it's cool to think about that all we have to do if in the world of podcasting is keep putting out podcasts. And if we simply endure past the point where most people quit, we can be in the top 10%. Marriage longevity. My parents often joke that they've been married for 30 years and 20 of them have been happy. But research shows that divorce rates tend to decrease significantly after 10 years of marriage, and the couples who make it past the 10-year mark are more likely to stay together. So if we want to beat those odds of marriage, all we have to do is make it past 10 years, and I'm sure it's just that simple. Career promotions. So there was a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research that employees who stay within the same company for at least 3 years are 45% more likely to receive promotions. And I love that because, so many people, and I don't know what the mix is in this room, but I'm assuming there's some entrepreneurs and business owners and then also, leaders in employment capacities of companies. And how cool to think about that we can increase the likelihood of us climbing that ladder by 45% if we just make it past the year 3 mark. Business growth. Companies that survive more than 5 years typically experience exponential growth in revenue, often seeing a doubling of revenue every 5 to 6 years. So for those of us in here that are entrepreneurs, we just have to endure until year 5. And then this one's also really near and dear to me, but social media success. As I mentioned earlier, I'm on a mission to inject positivity and to inspire people and to make the world a little bit of a better place. And sometimes I get discouraged that there's not a huge audience or not a huge reach or anything like that yet. But studies have shown that Instagram accounts that post consistently over 3 years see follower growth rates 100% higher than those that post inconsistently. And it's just another one of those examples that all we have to do is keep doing the thing. And if we keep doing the thing, the likelihood of us being successful is so much higher. Which to me, that's what endurance is. It's simply not quitting and putting one foot in front of the other. So get ready, because we're going to have some fun and talk about my experience running 100 miles and tie it into endurance and our mindsets and things like that. The first step is having the courage to sign up. I assume that everybody in here has hopes and dreams and goals. And one of the things that I think is really cool about days like today is that we're surrounded by incredibly successful people. I mean, it's why I'm so nervous. I'm looking out in the room and I'm seeing who's here and I'm seeing how amazing it is that we're all here. But I know that we all still want to do more and that we have big dreams and big goals and big aspirations. And the first step is to have the courage to sign up. Because if we don't start the thing, we never have the opportunity to endure and ultimately, get to success. I had a guest on my podcast named Josh Rosenthal, and he has really fun perspectives. He is the self-proclaimed worst ultra runner in the world, and I think he's attempted to run 100 miles 8 times. 7 of them he DNF'd, which means did not finish, and it's been really cool because he's like vulnerable about it and authentic and shares it. But he has this philosophy that just being at the starting line is in and of itself an enormous success, because everybody that's there is way out of their comfort zone and is trying something extremely difficult. They've also gone through all of the training and all of the things that go into getting to the actual starting line. But it's important to note that situations are never going to be perfect. So when I signed up to run Buffalo Run, it was in last fall, so about a year ago now. And the race is at the end of March in Salt Lake City. And so what that means is that you have to train through winter. And I was so dedicated with it. I hired a coach and I followed the training plan perfectly, and I was sticking with the process. And about 5 weeks before the race, I started to suffer with injuries, pretty severe leg injuries. I found out later, which we'll talk about here in a minute, you'll see, your feet hurt when your face gets swollen. And so we'll see that here in a minute. But I decided that I was going to show up anyway, and I found out in hindsight that I had stress fractures on my left leg. I had legitimate tendon injuries, and really was set up for failure right out the gate. But I think it speaks to how cool it is to have the courage to just start and just sign up. Just yesterday, I had a guest on my podcast. Her name's Susie Fair. She owns a coaching company, and I was actually expressing to her how nervous I am for this conversation. And what she said to me is that when you're feeling those fear things, a lot of times people will mask that with this idea of imposter syndrome, but really what it is that you're on the edge of greatness. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, and if we're feeling scared and we're feeling intimidated, it's because we're about to do something meaningful and do something that's worthwhile. So even standing at the starting line is remarkable. Starting your new business is remarkable. Accepting the new position, trying the new thing, opening up the new market, whatever it might be that you're thinking about in your life or your journey or your business that you're wanting to embark on, just starting is really, really noteworthy. I'm going to let the videos play a little bit so I can catch my breath. There's a saying in ultras that I love, and it's this idea that if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And one of the most important things I've learned in both life and in business and in running ultras is how important the community is for the people that are around us. It's funny to say that I ran 100 miles because I didn't, we did. So my wife and my dad were both my crew chiefs, and they had all the logistics planned and the nutrition and the hydration, and would drive to aid stations and these things like that. My business partner and my employee, which they're both here actually, shout out to Brittany and Chase they were crewing me on the 100 miler. They were there. I had a really good friend that signed up for the race with me, and he ran the entire thing literally with me. And then I had pacers that joined me at the later parts of the race when things got really, really difficult. I had a cousin and another really good friend that joined and ran with me. And my point in bringing that up is that I have no business running 100 miles, which is probably why it took 10 people to get me to the finish line. But it speaks to how powerful it can be if we surround ourselves with the right people. At Ascent Digital, I think one of the most important things that I've done, and it was by luck originally, is that I have hired people that are way smarter than I am, way more talented than I am, and bring so much to the table, and then I just get out of their way. And I have spent many a days in awe of how powerful this idea can be when we have people that are sharing a same mission and sharing a same initiative, but that have complementing strengths and complementing roles and responsibilities and are all headed in the same direction. And when that happens, we literally can become unstoppable. So whether it's in business or life or relationships or running 100 miles, think about where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are, and surround ourselves with people that are headed in the same direction and who complement our strengths and our weaknesses. And that way we can get help in the areas that we're weak. If you guys want to see speed. So, yeah, it's fun that these are. So, I forgot to mention, I'm going to go back to it because I'm starting to feel a tiny bit more comfortable. But for perspective of how important it is to have people around you, I didn't even make this presentation. So the way that it looks so cool is because I have people around me that are way more talented than I am to put all this stuff together. So thank you guys for doing that. But the other thing I've learned is that trajectory is far more important than velocity. And what I mean by that is the direction that we're headed in our lives and our businesses is so much more important than the speed in which we're headed there. To say that I ran 100 miles is almost comical. I waddled most of it, or we call it the death march, which is what you saw playing there. But it actually became really, really important for me to pay attention to movement more than and the direction that I was headed, way more so than the speed that I was heading, because I knew that if I could just continue to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward, that eventually I would get to the finish line. Ultras are kind of hilarious, or they're kind of funny because there's sort of two races that happen at the same time. Believe it or not, there are people that really do run 100 miles and run the entire thing. And I think the winner of this race finished in 15 hours. It took me over 30. But there are people that fly and actually race. And then there's the race within ourselves and the battle that we're each kind of fighting and facing on our own. And so one of the things I realized is to not compare our speed with anybody else's, because we're kind of playing different games. And when I think about our lives and our businesses and our careers and these things like that, we heard how powerful social media can be from the keynote from Upworthy. And it's so easy to start to pay attention to, what's our competition doing on social media? Or, it looks like everybody's winning in these other ways that they're not. And so to kind of block out the noise and to stop worrying about and comparing our speed to anybody else's speed, instead, we need to pay attention to the direction that we're headed, because the direction that we're headed is far more important than the speed with which we're going. And as long as we're headed in the right direction, we'll get where we need to go. And I think paying attention to the direction we're headed is also really important because it's a reality check. If in our organizations or our careers or whatever it might be, if we find that we're headed in the wrong direction, it gives us an opportunity to course correct and get back on track and head in the right direction. I also learned that perfection is the enemy of progress. As you saw in the video, about the worst running form and cadence you could ever imagine. But if I would have worried about perfection instead of just progress and the forward mobility, it would have been a detriment. And I think the same applies in our business. There's something to be said for just actually executing, and this idea that planning isn't doing. And if we execute and we know that we're going to be making mistakes along the way, but it's contributing to the direction that we want to head. What a powerful experience that can be. I love the idea. There's a saying that I've heard people say before, that the man who loves to walk is going to walk way further than the man who's walking to just get to the finish line. And so, forget trying to be perfect, forget how fast we're moving or anything like that. Instead, let's focus on the direction that we're headed, because that's how we'll get where we need to go. Oh, dang it. I hope there's volume. There's not volume. Well, I wish there was volume, because this is actually a really cool clip. I'll just explain it then, since there's not. So this was at mile 85 of the race, which was also the 24-hour mark, which is kind of comical in hindsight, because I went into it with a goal of finishing in 24 hours, and I was not even close. I'm in the middle of nowhere here in the dark, on a remote trail. But I basically stopped and expressed how cool of an experience I thought it was. And what I'm saying in that video is like, can we just stop for a second and appreciate where we are and the fact that we're doing this dang thing, and we're 85 miles in and we just hit the 24-hour mark, and how cool that is. And it taught me that what we pay attention to gets magnified, and the words that we speak really matter. By choosing to kind of shift the focus from how painful the experience was and how tired we were and how kind of distraught we were in that moment, and switching the narrative in our minds to talk about how cool it was that we're here and we're having a rich experience, and that, this is definitely going to be unforgettable, if nothing else. It was really profound, because it kind of lifted our spirits and it fueled us, and it got us going. There was another moment in the race where it's kind of this remote, there's these back loops where your crew can't get to you. And it's a series of loops that add up to about 18 miles, and you run them twice. So the second time through, this was part of that. And it's like 80 miles to 82 to whatever. It's like 78 to 96 is when those loops are the second time. And it's all where most of the hill climbing happens in the race as well. And it was really cool experience as we were kind of climbing up these hills and, really experiencing the steep parts of the race. For some reason, when things get hard, I get a little bit excited and start having some fun. And so I was complimenting people and making jokes. When we would pass people on the trail, I would joke that I could see their dust, that they were kicking up dust, and how fast they were going, and, walking past them. And then just sharing ideas of gratitude about how cool it was that we were all here and what a cool place we were in, and these things like that. And what I observed was really powerful, because when we injected positivity and gratitude into the experience, it not only lifted me up and energized me and kept me going, but it lifted up the people around me and it energized them, and it got other people, super, super excited. And it was so tangible, the impact of gratitude and excitement. And it was just really fun and neat to experience. At Ascent Digital, what we do is every Monday morning, I'm drinking my water because I'm nervous. Every Monday morning, we do an all-hands meeting, and it's your pretty standard, company meeting. We go over financials and big projects and things like that. But we end it with a gratitude roundtable, and we all go around the table and we share things that we're grateful for. The nature of our business, we joke at the office all the time that no news is good news. And what I mean by that is we don't have clients that are singing our praises when things are working. We hear from people when things aren't working. Not good or bad, it's just the reality of it. But we found that if we get intentional about finding things to be grateful for, that it changes the tone of the whole office, and it makes the bad things feel way less heavy. The other thing I've started doing, well, no, not that I've started. The other thing that I've been doing for years now is at the end of every calendar year, I handwrite thank you cards to all of our clients. And at first it was a little, I started doing it, well, when I really started doing it was when I was in sales, and the holiday period was kind of a quiet time. You can't call people and cold call and go on sales meetings. So I was thinking, how could I be productive in that week between Christmas and New Year's? And I started handwriting thank you cards to people. And then I've carried that on now. I've done it for 6 years in a row now. And I make it a priority and a point at Ascent Digital that I handwrite a thank you card to every single one of our clients, which I hope impacts them. I hope it spreads some gratitude and some positivity. But what I found is that it impacts me. And it really helps me feel appreciative and excited and grateful for the fact that we have these people as clients and that we get to do the work that we do and these things like that. So whether it's in the holiday season of our businesses or mile 85 of an ultra marathon, the things that we give our energy to matter. If we give our energy and our attention to the negative things, those are going to get amplified. But if we give our energy and our attention to the positive things and the things that we can have gratitude for, those are going to be magnified as well. You're stronger than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can. And also, none of us have any idea what we're doing. One of my favorite things about ultra running is that it has taught me how remarkable people are. And that's why I'm so excited to be talking to you guys today, because everybody in this room is remarkable and capable of amazing things. Ultra running is pretty profound because it sort of changes, it tests our boundaries, and it allows us to see other people pushing through and breaking their own boundaries. I first had a goal of running 100 miles last September at a 24-hour race. It's a loop course around Palmer Lake, Colorado. And I was naive and went into it way unprepared, but I thought that I maybe could run 100 miles, and I failed miserably. I made it to 67 miles. But what it did is it taught me that it taught me that it was possible. And that race was really cool because we're walking in circles, and when you're doing that, you get to spend some pretty intimate time with other people that are on their same a similar journey. And seeing people push through their limits and push through their boundaries taught me that every single one of us is stronger than we think we are, and we can go further than we think we can, and we're capable of more than we think we can. And I think that if any of us had any idea just how capable we actually were, and if we had any idea how resilient we actually were, any idea of how far we could actually go, we wouldn't be held back by fear anymore. There would be sort of these it would unleash us, and we would be unlimited. And I wish I could articulate it better other than that, but you have to know you genuinely are way stronger than you think you are and way more capable than you think you are. You just owe it to yourself to try and prove it to yourself, because once you do, it changes everything, because greatness genuinely is in you. So the race that I ran, the 100-miler that I ran, is called the Buffalo Run 100. And one of my favorite analogies from the race is there's this idea that buffalo are the only animal in the world that turns and faces storms when the storm is on the way. Cattle and other animals turn and run away from storms. And the result of that is that every other animal that's running away from a storm ends up being in the storm longer. But if you can turn and face the storm, you get through it faster because you're moving in the opposite direction. Like the last keynote speaker mentioned, I battle anxiety in a huge way. And one of the things that has happened in my life is my anxiety has sort of evolved and grown to the point where it's been crippling and stopped me from doing things that scared me. It presents itself in sort of like remote wilderness adventures or spending time in the mountains, or these things that I used to love and used to fill me up. And there could probably be a whole presentation on that, so we won't go into it. But I suffer from it. I struggle with it. And so I did the scariest thing imaginable, and I signed up to run a 100-mile trail ultra. And what I want everybody to know is how freeing that experience can be, is when we can turn and face our storms in our lives, whether it's traumas or problems or adversity or whatever it might be. Because once we can turn and face them head on and run directly into the storms that are on the horizons for us, you start to realize that nothing's that scary, and we can get through them really, really quickly. At business and at Ascent Digital, we have a philosophy that we want to deal with small problems before they become big problems. And we want to own when we make mistakes, and then we want to go way above and beyond for our clients to make up for those mistakes. We found time and time again that if we ignore the storm or try to run away from the storm, it's still going to hit us, and we're going to be in it for way longer. And so I loved the idea of how we can be like the buffalo. And whatever the storm is in our lives, whatever the problem is that we're facing, we can turn and run head into it, and we won't be in it for nearly as long if we do that. Oh, dang it. Volume would be fun. So you can see how fresh I look? I have a face for radio. But so that clip was at mile 91. And one of these days I'll figure out how to have audio here. But what I'm telling to the camera is that we're at mile 91, and I am like delirious. You can hear me kind of slurring when I'm talking, and I say I'm fresh as a flower, fresh as a cucumber, or something like that. And I totally butcher the saying. But if we're pursuing anything meaningful in life, or in business, or in our careers, or in our relationships, I think one of the most valuable things we can recognize is that it's going to be hard. That's the whole point. Anything worthwhile is hard. The process is going to be difficult. If it wasn't hard, if it wasn't difficult, you wouldn't want it anyway. And if the process was easy, you would already have it. And so I think if we can start to train our minds to recognize that the thing we're pursuing is inevitably going to have hardships and challenges and adversity, when those things pop up, we'll already be ready for them because we'll be waiting for it. I saw a thing on Instagram yesterday, and the way he explained it was that when business is growing, it's really hard. When business is stagnant, it's really hard. And when business is declining, it's really hard. So when I was going into this 100-miler, I was telling my wife, because I was having all this fear and all this anxiety, the only thing I know for certain was that it was going to hurt. I didn't know how bad it was going to hurt. I didn't know when the hurt was going to come. I didn't know for how long the hurt was going to last, and I didn't know the specifics of it, but I knew for certain that it was going to hurt. And it was great because it prepared me, because when the hurt came, I was like, well, I knew that was going to happen. I knew it was going to hurt. And I think if we can apply that to these other areas of our lives and realize that trials are going to come, it's going to get hard, but it's because we're pursuing something meaningful. The other thing I learned is that when it gets hard and when those difficulties arise is when we get better. So, if we're training for running or whatever it might be, and we're running in, and then that pain kind of sinks in, that's that critical moment, because that's now when we're making improvement. That's when our training is working and when we're actually getting better. And in our businesses, when things get hard, when trials pop up or when adversity comes up, that's our opportunity to get better. So I think if we know that hardship's going to come, and then I think if we celebrate it when it arrives and recognize what a cool opportunity that is, because now we have a chance to get better and to learn, we'll be set up for success to endure through the inevitable challenges and the hardships that are going to come. People less capable and less talented than you are already doing the thing that you're dreaming of. What I want everybody to know is that if I can run 100 miles, you can too. And I mean that so sincerely, but I also mean it metaphorically, that whatever the thing is that you're thinking about pursuing in your life, there are already people far less capable of you actually doing it. And I've been trying to figure out how to articulate this, but the difference between those that do and those that don't is the ones that do simply did. We showed up and we tried and we got out there. And so one of the things I want to encourage everybody in here is to ask yourself, why not me and why not now? Because it's in you and you can do it, and people far less capable of you are already doing it. And then remember that you didn't come this far to only come this far. So there was a time during the race, it happened at mile 78. There's a crude aid station at mile 78, and I was at like rock bottom low. I fell asleep and I had blisters all around my feet. We have a video clip where my wife takes my shoes off and everyone just goes, oh, like that's not good. Chase made a joke that he'd grab the pliers to get my toenails off. So I was 78 miles in, just over 3/4 of the way through, right? I already had blistered feet. I was already in a calorie deficit. I was already having GI issues, which we won't go into. I was already exhausted. I was tired. I was hurt. You know, the pain had already happened. And I had a decision to make because those remote 18-mile loops that I was telling you guys about happened after mile 78 aid station. And I knew that if I left the aid station at mile 78, I would have no choice but to finish the race because I obviously have to get back. Or I could, you know, stay with my family and my wife and my friends and call it quits there. But I reminded myself that the pain had already happened now and that the pain of quitting was going to be way, way greater than the pain of finishing because we've already started our journeys. We've already taken those leaps of faith. We've already had, you know, the hard times in our businesses and our careers, and we didn't come this far to only come this far. So get out of mile 78 aid because you're going to keep going, and that's how you'll ultimately finish. So I want everybody in here to know that you genuinely can do anything you set your mind to. All we have to do is endure. All we have to do is simply not quit and keep moving forward. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Remember to have the courage to sign up, that you can't do it alone, that your trajectory is way more important than your velocity, that you're stronger than you think you are. When problems arise, face them head on. Remember that it's going to be hard. That's the whole point. And that the pain of quitting is way greater than the pain of continuing. Thank you.